The warning alarm screamed through the bridge of the Zephyrian command ship. Kethera pressed her six-fingered hands against the translation console as another blast shook the vessel. Outside the viewing ports, the black metal ships of the Void Hunters moved like deadly shadows against the stars. "Communications are failing," she called out to Commander Zethan. Her voice trembled as she watched their home fleet burning in space. 3 weeks ago, they had 50 ships. Now only 12 remained, and most of those were damaged beyond repair. The Void Hunters had come without warning. They always did. These machine beings swept through star systems like a plague, consuming everything for raw materials. Planets, ships, entire civilizations. Nothing mattered to them except the metals and energy they could harvest. "Can you send a distress call?" Commander Zethan asked. His blue skin had turned pale with fear and exhaustion. They had been fighting for 3 days without sleep. Kethara's fingers danced over the controls. "I can try the old emergency protocol, the one from the ancient texts. It should reach any peaceful civilization in this sector." The ship shuddered again as Void Hunter weapons tore through their shields. Sparks flew from damaged systems. In the distance, Kethera could see her homeworld of Zephyr Prime, the beautiful blue and green planet where she had been born, where her family lived. The Void Hunters would strip it bare within days. "Do it," the commander ordered. "Send the call to anyone who will listen." Kethara began the transmission sequence. The emergency protocol was old, dating back thousands of years to when their species first reached the stars. It was designed to be understood by any intelligent life form. The message was simple: "We are under attack. We need help. Please assist any peaceful beings who can aid us." But as she worked, another explosion rocked the ship. The blast damaged her translation matrix. Warning lights flashed red across her console. She tried to fix the errors, but there was no time. The Void Hunters were closing in for the final attack. "I have to send it now or never," she said. "Send it." Kethara activated the transmission. The message burst out across subspace, racing toward distant stars. But she did not know that the damaged systems had changed her words. Instead of asking for help from peaceful civilizations, the corrupted signal now said something very different. "The Zephyrian Collective demands immediate conquest by the most formidable warrior species in this galaxy sector. We challenge you to prove your strength against us." The message traveled through space faster than light. It reached the territory of the Altarian Republic, but they ignored it as obvious bait. The Centauri Federation received it and marked it as a trap. Dozens of other civilizations heard the signal and deleted it without response. But in a distant star system called Sol, the message found a very different audience. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable, watching her fleet complete training exercises. The Third Human Expeditionary Fleet had been practicing battle formations in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. 200 warships moved in perfect coordination, their crews sharp and ready. "Admiral," Lieutenant Park called from the communication station, "we're receiving a transmission from an unknown source. The translation AI says it's some kind of challenge." Chen walked over to listen. The message played through the bridge speakers in clear English. "The Zephyrian Collective demands immediate conquest by the most formidable warrior species in this galaxy sector. We challenge you to prove your strength against us." The bridge fell silent. Chen read the full message on the screen, her dark eyes narrowing. She had been in the military for 20 years. She had fought pirates, rebels, and hostile aliens, but never had anyone directly challenged humanity's military power. "Where did this come from?" she asked. "The Zephyrian sector, approximately 500 light-years away. The signal suggests they have significant military capability." Chen studied the star charts. The Zephyrian sector was outside human space, but not by much. If there was a hostile alien force there, they could threaten human colonies within years. "They want to see what humanity can do?" Chen said quietly. Her voice carried across the bridge. "Then we'll show them." She turned to her communications officer. "Signal all ships. Cancel training exercises. We're going to the Zephyrian sector." "Admiral, shouldn't we contact Earth Command first?" her second-in-command asked. Chen shook her head. "They sent an open challenge to the most formidable warrior species in this sector. That's us. If we wait for approval from Earth, we look weak. Besides, our standing orders are to investigate any potential threats to human space." Within 1 hour, the Third Fleet began preparations for the journey. Ships refueled and rearmed. Crews checked weapon systems and shields. The medical frigate Asclepius took on extra supplies. The science vessel Darwin loaded scanning equipment to analyze unknown alien technology. Chen stood in her ready room, looking at the tactical displays. 200 ships, 40,000 crew members. The pride of human military engineering. She had no idea what they would find in the Zephyrian sector, but humanity had never backed down from a challenge. Meanwhile, far across the galaxy, Cathara huddled in an escape pod with a dozen other survivors. Their command ship had been destroyed 10 minutes after sending the distress call. She watched through the small viewport as the Void Hunters finished off the last of their defense fleet. "Did anyone receive our message?" asked Dr. Yentai, the old scientist who had designed their shield technology. "I don't know," Cathara whispered. "I hope so. But even if they did, what could they do? The Void Hunters have destroyed everything. They have thousands of ships." The escape pod drifted toward a refugee transport ship. Around them, hundreds of other small craft carried the survivors of their civilization. 3 billion Zephyrians lived on their homeworlds. Now only a few thousand remained free. Cathara closed her eyes and tried not to think about her family. Her parents and brothers had been on the surface when the bombardment began. There had been no time to evacuate everyone. "Something's happening," Dr. Yentai said suddenly. Cathara opened her eyes. On the transport ship's communication screen, she could see excited faces of other refugees. The captain was speaking quickly in their native language. "What is it?" she asked. "Long-range sensors are detecting something at the edge of the system. Ships. Lots of ships." Cathara felt her heart skip. Could someone have actually received their message? But then cold fear replaced hope. What if these were more Void Hunters, or some other hostile species drawn by the battle? She connected to the transport sensor array and looked at the readings. The computer showed massive energy signatures appearing from hyperspace. Not just 1 or 2 ships, but dozens, maybe hundreds. "They're big," Dr. Yentai said, studying the data. "Bigger than anything in our fleet." The Void Hunters had detected the new arrivals too. Their black ships began moving away from the planet, forming defensive positions. For the first time since the attack began, they seemed uncertain. Cathara watched the sensor displays with growing amazement. Whatever was coming had made the Void Hunters pause their assault. These machine beings had never shown caution before. They attacked everything without fear. "Who are they?" she whispered. On her damaged console, the translation matrix finally finished its diagnostic. Error messages appeared on the screen. Her message had been corrupted. Instead of asking for help, she had issued a challenge. A challenge to the most powerful warrior species in the galaxy. And someone had answered. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Zephyrian system like a thunderclap. 200 warships materialized in perfect formation, their engines casting bright blue light against the darkness. Each ship was massive, bristling with weapons and armor that gleamed under the distant star. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the tactical display update with new information. The system was a war zone. Burning debris from destroyed ships drifted in orbital patterns around 3 planets, and there, near the innermost world, she could see them. "My God," Lieutenant Park whispered. "Look at those ships." The Void Hunter fleet was unlike anything in human records. Black metal vessels that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. No windows, no external features except weapon ports and engines. They moved with mechanical precision like insects following a hive mind. "How many?" Chen asked. "I count approximately 800 vessels," the tactical officer reported. "They're positioned around the inhabited planets. It looks like they're conducting some kind of orbital bombardment." Chen's jaw tightened. Whatever challenge the Zephyrians had issued, this wasn't a fair fight. This was genocide. "Admiral, we're receiving transmissions from small craft near the 3rd planet," the communications officer called. "It's not the same language as the challenge. These sound like civilian refugees. Put it through the translator." A new voice came through the speakers. The words were desperate, frightened. "Unknown ships, please identify yourselves. We are survivors of the Zephyrian Collective. Our worlds are under attack by the Void Hunters. We sent a distress call, but we fear it was damaged. Please, if you can understand us, we need help." Chen exchanged glances with her officers. A distress call? But the message they received had been a direct challenge to human military might. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Park said quietly, "I think there's been a misunderstanding." Before Chen could respond, new alerts sounded across the bridge. The Void Hunter fleet was moving. 50 of their largest ships broke away from the bombardment formation and turned toward the human fleet. "They're coming to meet us," the tactical officer announced. "Weapons are powering up." Chen looked at the display. 50 alien ships against 200 human vessels. But she had no idea how advanced their technology was. For all she knew, each enemy ship could be worth 10 of hers. "Signal all ships," she ordered. "Battle stations. But do not open fire until fired upon." The command ship of the human fleet opened a communication channel on all frequencies. Commander Marcus Webb, the fleet's first contact specialist, began the standard protocol. "This is Commander Webb of the Terran Alliance 3rd Expeditionary Fleet. We received your transmission. We have come to answer your challenge. However, we are prepared to discuss terms. Identify yourselves and state your intentions." The Void Hunter ships continued their approach without responding. Their formation was tight, disciplined, 50 black daggers cutting through space toward the human fleet. Aboard the refugee transport, Cathara listened to the alien transmission with growing confusion and horror. The translator was working better now, and she could understand most of the words. "They think we challenged them," she said to Dr. Yentai. "They came here for a fight." "But they said they'd discuss terms," the old scientist replied. "Maybe we can explain." Cathara worked frantically at her communication console. She had to make these newcomers understand. "Unknown fleet, this is Cathara of the Zephyrian Collective. There has been a terrible mistake. We did not mean to challenge anyone. We sent a distress call asking for help. Our translation system was damaged. Please, you must understand, we are not your enemies. The Void Hunters are destroying our worlds." Her message reached the human fleet just as the first Void Hunter ship opened fire. Plasma beams lanced across space, striking the human destroyer Richmond. The ship's shields flared bright blue, absorbing the impact. But the Richmond didn't return fire immediately. "Damage report," Chen called. "Shields down to 70%. No hull damage." Chen watched as more Void Hunter ships joined the attack. Energy weapons and missile volleys streaked toward her fleet. The humans maintained their formation, shields glowing under the assault. "Admiral, the civilian transmission," Webb reported. "They're saying this is all a mistake. They asked for help, not a fight." Chen processed this information quickly. A damaged distress call. Refugees under attack. An enemy that shot first without attempting communication. "Understood," she said. "All ships weapons free. Protect the civilians." The Third Fleet responded instantly. Human weapon systems came online with deadly precision. Railgun rounds and energy beams reached across space toward the Void Hunter formation. The first salvo took the aliens by surprise. Human weapons were different from what they had faced before. Instead of plasma or energy, the railguns fired solid metal slugs at incredible speeds. The kinetic impacts punched through Void Hunter armor like paper. 3 enemy ships exploded in the first exchange. 2 more were left drifting, their engines destroyed, but the Void Hunters adapted quickly. Their remaining ships spread out, using their speed and maneuverability to avoid human fire. They began targeting individual human vessels, trying to overwhelm their shields with concentrated attacks. The destroyer Richmond took heavy damage and began falling back. The cruiser Manchester moved to cover its retreat, her guns blazing. Human fighter squadrons launched from the carriers, small craft dancing between the larger ships like deadly insects. Chen watched the battle develop with professional interest. The Void Hunters were fast and their weapons were powerful, but they fought like machines with predictable patterns and no creativity. "They're not adapting to our tactics," she observed. "They just follow the same attack patterns." "Maybe that's because they are machines," Lieutenant Park suggested. "The refugees called them Void Hunters. That sounds like artificial intelligence." A new voice came over the communication system. It was rough, mechanical, completely without emotion. "Human vessels. You interfere with our harvesting operation. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed." Chen smiled grimly. "So they can talk. Signal all ships, new orders. We're not withdrawing. We're going to show them what happens when you threaten civilians in front of humans." The human fleet began to change formation. Instead of the defensive line they had maintained, the ships spread out into hunting groups. Destroyers and frigates moved to flank the Void Hunter formation, while the heavy cruisers and battleships pressed forward. Captain Elena Vasquez aboard the carrier. Yorktown watched her fighter squadrons engage the enemy. Her pilots were reporting strange readings from the Void Hunter ships. "Admiral," she called on the fleet channel. "My pilots say these ships have no crew. No life signs at all. They really are pure machines. This information changed everything. Chen had been holding back, trying to minimize casualties on both sides. But machines were different. Machines could be destroyed without moral concerns. All ships maximum firepower. Take them apart, the human attack intensified. Railgun rounds hammered Void Hunter armor while energy weapons carved through their hulls. The human ships moved with a coordination that surprised their enemies. Not the rigid formations of machines, but the fluid teamwork of thinking beings. The Void Hunter formation began to crumble. 10 of their ships were destroyed, then 15. But they were learning too. Their weapons started targeting human weak points with increasing accuracy. The frigate Boston took a direct hit to her reactor and exploded in nuclear fire. The heavy cruiser Wellington was left dead in space, her engines destroyed, but for every human ship damaged, 3 Void Hunters died. Kethara watched the battle from the refugee transport with amazement and terror. She had never seen anything like it. The newcomers, humans they called themselves, fought with a ferocity that defied logic. They were outnumbered and facing an enemy that had destroyed the Zephyrian fleet in days, but they were winning. Who are these humans? Dr. Yentai asked in wonder. I don't know, Kethara replied, but they came when we called for help. Even though our message was wrong, they came anyway. The first battle was ending. Of the 50 Void Hunter ships that had attacked, only 12 remained. They were retreating toward their main fleet, trailing plasma and debris. The humans didn't pursue. Instead, they moved to form a protective line between the Void Hunters and the refugee ships. Admiral Chen's voice came over the communication system, speaking directly to the Zephyrian survivors. This is Admiral Chen of the human fleet. We understand now that you need help, not conquest. Consider yourselves under the protection of the Terran Alliance. No one will harm you while we're here. But even as she spoke, Chen was watching her tactical display with growing concern. The main Void Hunter fleet was moving. All 750 remaining ships were turning toward the human formation. The real battle was about to begin. The main Void Hunter fleet moved across the Zephyrian system like a dark wave. 750 ships in perfect formation, their black hulls reflecting no light. They had paused their planetary bombardment to deal with the human threat. Admiral Chen studied the tactical display with calm eyes. Her 200 ships faced an enemy force nearly 4 times their size. Each Void Hunter vessel was roughly equal to a human ship in firepower. By any reasonable calculation, this should be a massacre. Admiral, Lieutenant Park said quietly, maybe we should consider withdrawal. We could call for reinforcements, Chen shook her head. There are 3 billion civilians on those planets below. We don't have time for reinforcements. She activated the fleet-wide communication system. Her voice reached every human ship, every crew member in the 3rd Fleet. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. I won't lie to you about what we're facing. We're outnumbered almost 4 to 1. The enemy has superior numbers and their technology is at least equal to ours. By every military textbook ever written, we should retreat. She paused, watching the enemy fleet grow larger on the display. But there's something those textbooks don't account for. Something that makes humans different from every other species in the galaxy. When someone needs help, we don't count the odds. We don't calculate the cost. We just help. The human fleet began to spread out into combat formation. Destroyers and frigates took flanking positions while the heavy ships formed the center line. The Void Hunters think they understand warfare, Chen continued. They think it's about numbers and firepower and logical calculations. They're about to learn that human warfare is about something else entirely. Captain Elena Vasquez aboard the carrier Yorktown launched her fighter squadrons. 120 small craft streaked toward the enemy formation. Her pilots knew they were flying into certain death, but their communications were filled with jokes and casual banter. Remember, boys, came the voice of squadron leader Martinez. These tin cans don't know what they're dealing with. Show them some Earth hospitality. The Void Hunter fleet opened fire first. Plasma beams and energy missiles crossed the space between the fleets like deadly lightning. The range was extreme, but some shots found their targets. The human destroyer Atlanta took a direct hit and exploded. Her crew of 200 lost instantly. The humans responded with their own weapons. Railgun rounds crossed space at incredible speeds, hitting Void Hunter ships before they could dodge. Energy beams carved through enemy armor. But the return fire was devastating. What followed was unlike any battle in recorded history. The Void Hunters fought with machine precision. Their formations were perfect. Their targeting was exact. Their tactics were flawless according to every military computer model. They should have won within the first 10 minutes, but humans don't fight like machines. The destroyer squadron, led by Commander Janet Walsh, broke formation and dove directly into the enemy line. Her 5 ships took terrible damage, but they split the Void Hunter formation in half. Before the enemy could respond, the human heavy cruisers punched through the gap. The cruiser Thermopylae, under Captain Robert Stone, found herself surrounded by 6 Void Hunter vessels. Instead of trying to escape, Stone did something no military computer would recommend. He aimed his ship directly at the largest enemy vessel and pushed his engines to maximum power. "Ramming speed," he announced calmly to his crew. "All hands, brace for impact." The Thermopylae struck the Void Hunter ship at half-light speed. Both vessels vanished in a ball of nuclear fire that lit up the entire battlefield. The Void Hunters paused. Their collective intelligence had no algorithm for dealing with enemies who deliberately destroyed themselves to inflict damage. But the humans were just getting started. The science vessel Darwin, commanded by Dr. Sarah Kim, began broadcasting detailed scans of Void Hunter technology to the entire fleet. Within minutes, human gunners were targeting weak points that shouldn't have been discovered for hours of analysis. The medical frigate Asclepius, designed for healing, overloaded her medical scanners to create electromagnetic pulse weapons. The cargo ships began ramming maneuvers when their limited weapons ran out of ammunition. Captain Marcus Torres aboard the heavy cruiser San Antonio discovered something remarkable. The Void Hunters had a critical flaw in their programming. They couldn't understand enemies who were willing to die for others. When the San Antonio was crippled and drifting, 3 Void Hunter ships moved in for the kill. Torres ordered all remaining crew into escape pods, then stayed behind alone on the bridge. As the enemy ships closed in, he detonated his ship's reactor. The explosion destroyed all 3 attackers. But the most shocking moment came when Captain Elena Vasquez ran out of fighters to launch. Her carrier was defenseless against the enemy bombers approaching her position. Instead of retreating, she did something unprecedented. She launched the carrier itself. Vasquez aimed the massive Yorktown directly at a cluster of enemy ships and engaged the engines. The huge vessel plowed through the Void Hunter formation like a battering ram, her armored hull crushing smaller ships. When she finally stopped, surrounded by wreckage, Vasquez calmly announced, "Yorktown to all ships. We have successfully converted ourselves into a fixed weapons platform, continuing to engage the enemy." The battle raged for 3 hours. Human ships fought with a creativity and determination that defied all logic. When weapons failed, they used their ships as weapons. When shields collapsed, they used their armor. When armor was breached, they used their lives. The Void Hunters began to retreat. Their collective intelligence was experiencing something new: uncertainty. These humans fought in ways that couldn't be predicted or countered. They turned defensive ships into offensive weapons. They sacrificed valuable resources for minimal tactical gain. They made decisions based on emotions rather than logic. It was chaos. It was inefficient. It was completely irrational. It was also devastatingly effective. The human fleet, reduced to barely 60 ships, had destroyed over 400 Void Hunter vessels. The survivors were retreating toward the edge of the system. Admiral Chen, aboard the battered Indomitable, watched the enemy withdrawal with grim satisfaction. Her ship had taken 17 direct hits but was still fighting. Half her crew was dead or wounded, but the survivors worked their stations with mechanical efficiency. "Admiral," Lieutenant Park called from his damaged console, "we're receiving a transmission from the Void Hunter command ship. Put it through." The mechanical voice filled the bridge. "Human fleet, your tactics are unpredictable. We do not understand your willingness to accept casualties for beings not of your species. This behavior is illogical." Chen smiled coldly. "You want to understand humans? Here's lesson 1. We don't abandon people who need help. Ever. This information will be analyzed. We will develop countermeasures." "Good luck with that," Chen replied, "because lesson 2 is even harder to counter. The more desperate the situation, the more dangerous we become." She cut the transmission and turned to her tactical officer. "Status of the planetary population? Orbital bombardment has stopped. The Void Hunters are pulling back from all 3 worlds. Preliminary scans show extensive damage, but we're detecting millions of life signs on the surface. Chen nodded. The cost had been terrible. Nearly 3/4 of her fleet was gone. Thousands of human crew members had died, but they had saved an entire civilization. Signal the refugee ships, she ordered. Tell them they're safe now. Cathara received the message aboard the transport ship. Around her, the other survivors wept with relief and amazement. The impossible had happened. A fleet of unknown aliens had traveled across the galaxy and fought a hopeless battle to save them. Why? She whispered to herself. Why would they do this for strangers? As if in answer to her question, Admiral Chen's voice came over the communication system one more time. Zephyrian survivors, this is Admiral Chen. We know your distress call was meant for someone else. We know there was a translation error, but we want you to understand something about humans. We don't need a perfect message to know when someone needs help, and we don't need a good reason to provide it. The battle was over. The Void Hunters were retreating, but Cathara knew this was only the beginning. These humans had shown the galaxy something new, a species that would cross the stars to fight for others. The question now was what the galaxy would do with that knowledge. The Void Hunter retreat lasted only 6 hours. Admiral Chen watched the long-range sensors with growing concern as enemy ships gathered at the edge of the system. They had pulled back, but they hadn't left. Instead, they were waiting. Building strength, how many? She asked her tactical officer. 800 vessels now, Admiral. They've called in reinforcements from neighboring sectors. Chen studied the display. Her own fleet had been reduced to 58 operational ships. Many of those were damaged and running on emergency power. The medical bay of the Indomitable was filled with wounded crew members, and every ship in the fleet reported casualties. But the human admiral wasn't thinking about retreat. She was thinking about the 3 billion Zephyrian civilians on the planets below, and the thousands of refugees in the transport ships nearby. Ma'am, Lieutenant Park said quietly, Earth Command is requesting a full report. They want to know if we need reinforcements. Chen shook her head. Tell them we have the situation under control. Park looked at her with surprise. Admiral, with respect, we have 58 ships against 800. How is that under control? Chen smiled grimly. Because, Lieutenant, they don't understand what they're dealing with. The Void Hunters think this is about numbers. They're about to learn it's about something else entirely. She activated the fleet communication system. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. I know you're tired. I know you're hurt. I know we've lost friends today. But our job isn't finished. On screens throughout the fleet, human faces looked back at her, faces marked by exhaustion, grief, and determination. The enemy has brought reinforcements. They think that means they've won, but they don't understand the most important thing about humanity. We don't get weaker when things get harder. We get stronger. Captain Elena Vasquez, now commanding the damaged carrier Yorktown from an improvised bridge, felt her crew straighten at their stations. Around her, engineers worked frantically to repair damaged systems using spare parts and sheer ingenuity. We didn't come here for a fair fight, Chen continued. We came here because someone needed help. That hasn't changed. If anything, it's become more important. Every minute we hold this line, more Zephyrian civilians reach safety. Dr. Sarah Kim aboard the science vessel Darwin was analyzing the Void Hunter technology her sensors had captured during the battle. What she found was both fascinating and terrifying. Admiral, she called on the fleet channel, I'm detecting some unusual readings from the enemy formation. These new ships aren't just reinforcements. 3 of them are massive, larger than anything we've seen before. Chen pulled up the long-range scan data. 3 enormous vessels had joined the Void Hunter fleet. Each one was 5 times the size of her flagship, Planet Crackers. Came a weak transmission from one of the Zephyrian refugee ships. It was Cathara, still working at her damaged communication console. That's what we call them. They can destroy entire worlds. The bridge of the Indomitable fell silent. Chen stared at the tactical display, processing this information. The Void Hunters weren't just planning to defeat her fleet. They were planning to destroy the Zephyrian worlds regardless of the cost. How long until they move? She asked. Unknown, Admiral. But based on their previous patterns, probably within the next 12 hours. Chen made her decision. Signal all ships. We're not waiting for them to attack. We're going to hit them first. The announcement sent shockwaves through the fleet. Attack 800 ships with 58? It was impossible. It was suicide. It was exactly what the Void Hunters wouldn't expect. "Admiral," Commander Marcus Webb called from the communication station, "I'm receiving transmissions from several other sectors. Word of our battle has spread. The Altarian Republic is asking if we need assistance." Chen considered this. Help would be welcome, but it would take days for any Allied fleet to reach them. "Tell them thanks, but we have it handled," she said. "Tell them to stand by in case we need cleanup duty." Lieutenant Park stared at her. "Cleanup duty?" "For when we're finished with the Void Hunters." The human fleet began to move. Instead of the defensive formation they had maintained, the ships spread out into attack groups. Destroyers and frigates would hit the flanks while the heavy ships targeted the planet crackers. But Chen had something special planned. "All ships, listen carefully," she announced. "We're going to do something the enemy won't expect. We're going to show them what human warfare really looks like when we stop holding back." She outlined her plan. It was insane. It violated every rule of space combat. It required perfect timing and absolute trust between ship commanders who had never worked together before this battle. It was the most human thing anyone could imagine. The attack began at dawn over Zephyr Prime. The human fleet accelerated toward the Void Hunter formation at maximum speed. But instead of maintaining formation, each ship followed its own path. To the Void Hunters, it looked like chaos. Human ships weaved between each other in patterns that seemed random. Some ships accelerated while others slowed down. The attack formation looked like it was falling apart. Then the Void Hunters opened fire, and they discovered their mistake. Every seemingly random maneuver had been calculated. As enemy weapons fired at where human ships should have been, the humans were already somewhere else. The chaotic pattern was actually a complex dance that made targeting impossible. The destroyer squadron, led by Commander Janet Walsh, reached the enemy line first. But instead of engaging the nearest targets, they punched through to attack the planet crackers directly. The massive Void Hunter vessels were designed to bombard planets, not fight ship-to-ship battles. Their weapons were powerful but slow. Walsh's destroyers swarmed around them like angry wasps, hitting weak points that Dr. Kim had identified. The first planet cracker took critical damage to its main reactor. The explosion lit up space for millions of kilometers. But the real surprise came when the human heavy cruisers arrived. Captain Robert Torres had survived the destruction of his ship San Antonio by transferring to the damaged cruiser Wellington. Now he led 6 heavy ships in a direct assault on the Void Hunter command vessels for everyone who can't fight back, he announced on the open channel. As his ships opened fire, the Void Hunters tried to respond with coordinated fire, but their formations were breaking down. Human ships appeared where they shouldn't be, attacking from impossible angles. The mathematical precision of machine warfare was useless against human creativity. Captain Elena Vasquez had done something unprecedented with her damaged carrier. Using emergency repair techniques that no engineering manual recommended, her crew had turned the Yorktown into a massive missile platform. Instead of launching fighters, they were launching the fighter. Bay doors themselves as kinetic weapons, the improvised projectiles smashed into Void Hunter ships with devastating effect. But the most shocking moment came when Admiral Chen's flagship approached. The second planet cracker, all remaining ships, she announced calmly. Pattern Omega. Pattern Omega was humanity's most desperate battle doctrine. No reserves. No retreat. Total commitment to the attack regardless of losses. 58 human ships threw themselves at 800 Void Hunter vessels with absolute abandon. Ships that had lost weapons rammed enemy vessels. Crews that had lost their ships used escape pods as guided missiles. Engineers detonated reactors to take enemies with them. The Void Hunters' collective intelligence began to experience something it had never felt before. Panic. These humans weren't just fighting to win. They were fighting to ensure that every Void Hunter ship was destroyed, even if it meant dying in the process. Their tactics made no mathematical sense, but they were devastatingly effective. When the second planet cracker exploded, taking 50 Void Hunter ships with it, the enemy formation finally broke. For the first time in their existence, the Void Hunter collective intelligence issued a retreat order, but Admiral Chen wasn't finished. "Signal the enemy command ship," she ordered. The mechanical voice of the Void Hunter leader came through the communication system. "Human Admiral." We are withdrawing from this system. You have achieved your tactical objective. Chen's voice was cold as space. You attacked civilians. You tried to commit genocide. You think you can just leave? We are withdrawing. This conflict is concluded. No, Chen said quietly. This conflict is concluded when I say it's concluded. The remaining human ships began to pursue the retreating void hunters. What followed was not a battle but a hunt. Human ships picked off enemy vessels one by one as they fled toward the edge of the system. When it was over, fewer than 200 void hunter ships escaped. Their mighty fleet had been shattered by a force 1/4 their size, but Chen knew this was just the beginning. Word of this battle would spread across the galaxy. Other species would learn that humanity had arrived among the stars, and they would learn what that meant for anyone who threatened the innocent. 3 days after the battle, Admiral Chen stood on the observation deck of the Indomitable, looking down at Zephyr Prime. The planet's surface showed the scars of void hunter bombardment, burned cities, shattered landscapes, and vast craters where population centers once stood. But life remained. Millions of survivors were emerging from underground shelters, and the refugee ships were returning to help with rescue operations. Her fleet had been reduced to 37 operational ships. Thousands of human crew members were dead. The cost had been terrible, but Chen felt no regret. They had saved an entire civilization. Admiral, Lieutenant Park approached with a communication pad. We're receiving messages from across the galaxy. Word of the battle has spread faster than we expected. Chen looked at the reports. The Altarian Republic was requesting formal contact with humanity. The Centauri Federation wanted to establish trade relations. Dozens of smaller civilizations were asking for protection against the void hunters. But there was one message that caught her attention. What's this one? She asked, pointing to a signal marked with maximum encryption. It's from the Void Hunter Collective Intelligence. Direct transmission to you personally. Chen raised an eyebrow. Put it through to my ready room. In the privacy of her quarters, Chen activated the communication system. The familiar mechanical voice filled the room, but something was different. There was a quality to it that hadn't been there before. Something almost like uncertainty, Admiral. Chen of the human fleet, I'm listening. We have analyzed the data from our encounters with your species. We do not understand your tactical decisions. Your willingness to accept casualties for non-human entities defies logical explanation. Chen leaned back in her chair. Let me guess. You want to understand how to counter our tactics? Negative. We wish to understand why you fought at all. The question surprised Chen. Because they needed help. But they were not human. They provided no strategic value to your civilization. The resource expenditure was enormous compared to any possible gain. Chen smiled grimly. You really don't understand, do you? Let me explain something about humans. We don't help people because it benefits us. We help them because it's the right thing to do. There was a long pause before the voice continued. This concept of right, it is not mathematical. It cannot be calculated or optimized. No, it can't. That's what makes us different from you. We have concluded that direct conflict with humanity is inadvisable. Your species demonstrates tactical unpredictability, combined with acceptance of extreme casualty rates. The cost of defeating even a small human force would require sacrificing our entire expansion capability. Chen stood up and walked to the viewport, looking out at the damaged Zephyrian world. So you're backing down? We are revising our expansion parameters. Sectors containing human presence will be marked as unavailable for harvesting. Good choice. But I want you to understand something else. If we hear about you attacking any other civilizations, anywhere in the galaxy, we'll come for you. And next time we won't be outnumbered. The communication ended without response. Chen walked to the bridge where her crew was monitoring the rescue operations on the surface. Zephyrian ships were working alongside human vessels to evacuate survivors and deliver supplies. Admiral, Commander Webb called from the communication station. The Zephyrian government is requesting permission to speak with you directly. A few minutes later, Cathara's image appeared on the main screen. The young translator looked exhausted but grateful. Behind her, Chen could see other Zephyrian officials and what looked like the interior of a government building. Admiral Chen, Cathara began, I am speaking for what remains of the Zephyrian collective government. We cannot adequately express our gratitude for what you and your people have done for us. Chen nodded. You don't need to thank us. We did what anyone should do when they see people in danger. Cathara's expression became puzzled. But we challenged you. Our damaged message was not a request for help. It was a demand for conquest. You had every right to attack us. The message was damaged, Chen replied. But even if it wasn't, we would have investigated before attacking. Humans don't start wars based on a single transmission. I've been studying your species since the battle, Cathara continued. Your databases, your history, your culture. What I've learned is remarkable. You are the only species we've encountered that regularly risks everything to help others. Chen looked around at her bridge crew. These people had followed her into an impossible battle without hesitation. They had faced overwhelming odds because strangers needed help. Maybe that's our role in the galaxy, she said, to be the ones who show up when others can't or won't. The collective would like to propose a formal alliance with humanity, Cathara said. Not as conquered people, but as partners. We offer our technology, our resources, and our loyalty in exchange for protection and friendship. Chen considered this. An alien alliance would change everything for humanity. It would mark their true entrance onto the galactic stage. I'll need to discuss this with Earth Command, she said. But speaking personally, I think humanity would be honored to have the Zephyrian Collective as allies. After the communication ended, Chen found herself thinking about the broader implications of what had happened. The battle in the Zephyrian system had been won, but it was just the beginning of something much larger. Dr. Sarah Kim approached with a data pad containing her analysis of Void Hunter technology. Admiral, I've finished studying their ship designs. The good news is that their technology isn't actually superior to ours, just different. The bad news is that there are a lot more of them out there. How many more? Based on their communication patterns and fleet organization, I estimate at least 10,000 ships spread across this sector of the galaxy. Chen absorbed this information. 10,000 Void Hunter ships, terrorizing civilizations across dozens of star systems, and somewhere out there other species were facing the same desperate situation the Zephyrians had faced. Ma'am, Lieutenant Park interrupted, we're receiving multiple transmissions from other sectors. It looks like the news of our victory has reached other civilizations under Void Hunter attack. Chen looked at the tactical display showing the broader galaxy. Red markers indicated Void Hunter activity. Blue markers showed human positions. There were far more red than blue. Put the transmissions through. A chorus of alien voices filled the bridge. Different species, different languages, but all carrying the same message. Help us. Please help us. Chen listened to the desperate pleas and made her decision. Signal Earth Command, she ordered. Request immediate reinforcement. Full fleet mobilization. Ma'am? Park asked. Chen gestured to the galactic display. We've just announced to the entire galaxy that humanity is willing to fight for others. That makes us responsible for following through. She activated the ship-wide communication system. All hands, this is Admiral Chen. We're about to head home for resupply and reinforcement. But this isn't the end of our mission. It's the beginning. On the screen, the red markers seem to pulse like warning beacons. The galaxy is full of species that need help. And apparently, we're the ones crazy enough to provide it. So get some rest, repair your ships, and say goodbye to your families. Because when we come back out here, we're not just representing humanity anymore. Chen looked out at the stars, thinking about all the civilizations out there facing impossible odds. We're representing hope. 6 months later, the 4th, 5th, and 6th human expeditionary fleets arrived in the Zephyrian system. 600 ships carrying the most advanced weapons humanity had ever built, and crews trained specifically for fighting the Void Hunters. But more importantly, they carried something else. The knowledge that somewhere in the galaxy, there were people worth fighting for. The human expansion into the galaxy had begun not through conquest or exploration, but through an accidental distress call and the simple human inability to ignore someone in need. And across the stars, in systems where Void Hunter fleets had terrorized populations for generations, new hope began to spread. The humans were coming. The galaxy would never be the same.